This podcast is part of the Robots Radio Rocket Club, a program designed to help all podcasts reach their full potential. For information about joining the Robots Radio Rocket Club, check out robotsradio.net.
Hey all you heroes and champions, crows, pirates, and inquisitors. Welcome to the Dragon Age Lorecast. I'm Shelby.
And I'm Austin.
And we are so excited to bring you this podcast. Every episode, we'll be talking about a different topic in the Dragon Age universe. From the Maker to Lyrium to Aravels, we will cover it all. There will be spoilers. And always remember, swooping is bad.
Hey Shelby.
Hey Austin.
Are you ready to talk about some Dragon Age?
I'm super duper ready.
So we have a very, very special guest with us. So who's our guest, Shelby?
Well, today, E.K. Johnston is with us to talk about Dragon Age. Welcome.
Hi. So we primarily know you from, we've read everything you've written about Star Wars.
Thank you.
Except for your new book that is coming out. But we're very excited for that. But I got this idea because I was trolling Twitter. And I saw you tweeting about Dragon Age, and I was like, "Oh, that'd be awesome! What a great crossover and talking about Dragon Age." And so we ask this to every guest that we ever have on the show, but what drew you to Dragon Age, and what keeps you coming back?
So I am really bad at video games. I feel like I should open with that. And in the household when I was growing up, my mom was super anti video games. We received a family PlayStation 1. That's how long ago it was. We received a family PlayStation 1 for Christmas the year that I was 16. It was to be shared between all four of the kids, two of whom did not live at home anymore, but it was addressed to all four of us. And my brother, who's 26 at the time, goes, "Oh my God, there really is a Santa." That's how unbelievable it was that there was a PlayStation in our house. So I just never learned. I'm one of those people that moves the controller to make myself jump farther, that kind of stuff. And but I became aware mostly when Mass Effect 3 came out and there was that whole thing that the storytelling in video games was different than I expected. I was thinking Super Mario level storytelling. I didn't realize that it went deeper than that. So I watched a friend play through all of Mass Effect. We did all three games. I made the dialogue choices. She did all the aiming, which is what I am bad at. And then in I guess it was 2018, I finally bought my first television. And then I was like, I don't have anything that plays DVDs. Should I buy, I wasn't going to buy a DVD player. I was like, should I buy an Xbox or a PlayStation? I feel like at this point it would be a good. So I bought myself an Xbox and I went to the used game store and they had all three Dragon Ages and all three Mass Effects. And so I bought them for $80. And the guy was like, "Oh, BioWare fan?" And I was like, "We'll find out." So I bought all three Dragon Age games. I knew one individual fact about each game before I started playing it. Actually, I don't think I knew anything about Dragon Age Origins. Did I know anything about Dragon Age Origins? I don't think I did. The thing I knew about DA2 was that it was super easy to romance Anders. That was all I knew. And going into Inquisition, all I knew was that most of my friends had this deep hatred of Blackwall.
Oh no.
And I didn't know why, but that was it. That was all I knew. So I played them totally blind. I live tweeted the whole experience. It was the most amazing thing. It was probably my favorite thing I've ever had on the internet. I went on tour for Queen's Shadow in the middle of my Dragon Age Inquisition playthrough. It was beautiful. I don't think I talked to a single person about Queen's Shadow the whole time I was on tour. It was just Dragon Age all the time. It was amazing. I was in the middle of a really important plot point. I had to go to Star Wars Celebration. It was just all kinds of stuff. And I love it. And I keep going back. I'm on my fourth complete. I just started a couple days ago, actually, my fourth playthrough of Inquisition. So I've done all the games 4 times now. And I just I replay Dragon Age Origins so that I can do the same thing over and over and over again. And then I replayed Dragon Age 2 with this like futile hope that maybe this time I'll be able to do something different, which of course you never can.
Yeah.
And then Inquisition, I just find it like, I just love talking to people and helping people. And so like most people complain about the hinterlands and I'm like, oh, I'm out of quests in the hinterlands. I go somewhere else now.
That is
Inquisition is the game to help people. If you love helping people,
I love
that is the game for you. DA2,
So
you try to help people and they resort to blood magic.
Yeah,
So,
every time. Every time.
Yeah, or they'll try to kill you.
Yeah. There's no good way out of that one.
So do you have any favorite characters, companions? You can do from all the games or
so Alistair is probably like my favorite character in the game. That's not me. Like I think it's weird because people are like, who's your favorite character? I'm like, I'm my favorite character in the game, clearly. Like my warden is my favorite, and then my inquisitor and my hawk I go back and forth depending on usually which part of the game I'm playing. I love my warden, but of the people I am not in charge of, I love Alistair. I love Sera and Cassandra. And I love the arc that Liliana gets. Even though she's not a character I spend a ton of time with, usually, because I'm always romancing Alistair. So it's a lot of I love the arc that she has and the development of her storyline. I think it's fantastic.
Totally agree. We did a deep dive on her a couple weeks ago, and I really agree with that. And I also love Cassandra. She's like my number one favorite.
The only reason I would ever play through as a dude.
Yes. That was my second playthrough of Inquisition was for that reason.
I haven't done it yet, but it's like someday.
Oh, it's so good.
Someday I'll run out of characters, and then I'll do my dude Cassandra playthrough.
Yeah, it's so good.
Yes. Well, I'm a Fenris stan. That's my all-time favorite character.
You are. That's called pain.
Yes. So I have a very, very deep dislike for Anders. Just because, well, this is a strange fact, and Anders is the only companion to approve if you give Fenris back to slavery.
Really?
Yeah.
I've never done it, so I didn't know.
Right.
I just read about it. I've never done it. That's one of those things like not curing the genophage that I'll never do. I'll never give Fenris.
Yeah.
But yeah, so, and then
I didn't know that.
My relationship with Anders is traumatizing. But
so I have to tell you, my relationship with Anders also slightly traumatizing. First of all, I hate Fenris. That's not true. I'm romancing him this time, and it was like the hardest thing I've ever done. I was like, you have to like me long enough to seal this, and then we can go back to do whatever we want. I just find him really frustrating, and I think the reason I find him really frustrating, one, I always play as a rogue, so all through part 1, he refers to Bethany as an it. And I just hate him.
I hate that.
He's also like, he has several chances to undergo personal growth and he takes none of them, which I find frustrating. But when it comes to Anders, it's funny because I totally romanced him in my first playthrough because I'd met him in Awakenings. And so I was like, I like this guy, he seems pretty cool. So I romanced him, and about like 4 days into my playthrough, so like I was well into Act 2 at this point, I tweeted possibly the best thing I have ever tweeted in my life, which was, I just have to say, I find the Kirkwall chantry really unnerving. I just don't like it. Like, I don't know if it's the candles or the music, but I really hate it. And I don't think you can kill a building.
Oh no!
And there was like,
well,
like usually people like my tweets when I'm live tweeting because they all know I'm playing without spoilers, right? Yeah. Dead silence, crickets. Like nobody likes this tweet. Nobody does anything. I was like, this is weird. And then like 3 days later, I was like, oh my God, this is the most amazing thing I've ever said. Like I had some great ones when I was starting to make predictions towards the end of Inquisition, but oh my God, I was like, can't believe that just happened. It was the best thing I've ever tweeted.
That's so funny.
I don't think you can kill a building.
You can't top that. Turns out you can.
Yeah, it turns out you can. But no, even the first time when I romanced Anders, I stabbed him afterwards. I always do. Whether he's my friend or not, I always stab him. So I like to feel like that's like the kind of the closest to a midline you can get. I did have to kill Fenris the first time, which was traumatic. I have a gift for picking, like, if there's 3 dialogue options, that will be the good ending, and 1 that will screw you over. I excel at picking that one. Like, I'm really good at it. So I did have to kill Fenris the first time through. But we get better.
You live and you learn.
Killing Anders is the only gut reaction in a video game I've ever made.
Are you for real?
Really?
Yeah, like most of the time I can play, because like playing D&D and all those things, I can detach myself pretty well from the game. But just like where I was in life and what was going on when I was playing Dragon Age 2, watching that betrayal was just too deep, and I just gut like
that's it. Yeah.
Gut reaction, you're done.
I think like all of my reactions are gut reactions. Like, I'm actively trying on this Inquisition playthrough to play through I'm an elf for the first time. So I'm like actively trying to be like someone who is like caught up in this cause that they don't believe in, but like they have the option to do some good, which lasted for like 10 seconds. So I'm like, oh no, I'll just disagree with all the Andrastians and call it. Right. But I always play through, and it was a whole thing the first time I played, because I had made a truly atrocious decision that I didn't realize was going to be that bad. And basically we got to the lands meet, and it was like super emotional, and I was like, okay, you have that option again. Excel at picking the one bad thing. So you have that option at the end of the lands meet where it's like, Alistair is king, and I'm the queen. Honora is the queen. Alistair and Honora get married. And I was like, we have all made a lot of decisions today, so I'm just gonna put Alistair on the throne, and then we'll worry about everything afterwards. He dumps you immediately. I was playing as a human Kusland. It's almost impossible to get dumped as a human Kusland.
Oh, wow.
He dumped me. There are 4 dialogue options. 2 of them resulted in him taking you back. 1 of them resulted in him taking you back as his mistress. The 4th one is like, it's over. It's done. I picked the 4th one again. And I was like, oh my God. So I took Liliana and Wynn and the dog. So like my bestie and my grandma and the dog. And I went and I did the last Slim Cauldry mission where you just chop a bunch of people's heads off. Because I had that spinny thing by that point. So you like spin around and like people's heads. Anyway. Yeah. And then I was crying the entire time. And then I was just like ugly crying. I was like, I have to call Emma. Like, I'm so upset. And then I was like, it is 1:00 in the morning and this guy is fictional. Like, I can't call Emma. So I cried myself to sleep, didn't play the game for 4 days. And I was like, oh my God, it was so funny. And like Emma, when she finally like talked to me about it on Monday, was like, you know, you can go back and do it again. And I was like, no.
It's not the same.
If he has chosen Ferelden, then Ferelden will have him. So the next like 3 times, obviously, I was like, damn right, I'm queen. I'm not making this mistake again.
Exactly.
Yeah, I had a similar experience in Origins when I played through the first time, because I didn't look up a guide. I didn't look up anything. And like, I'm new to Dragon Age 2. Or newer at least. And I was like, okay, well, I want Alistair to be king, but I also think it would be a good strategic idea if we make Logain a Grey Warden, because that'll be good redemption for him. And plus we could always use more wardens. And then Alistair is like Fury.
Yeah. And it just did not end well for me.
No.
And
did you have to kill him?
Alistair. I did. Yeah. It was so sad.
I wasn't romancing him. I was romancing Liliana, so that was at least okay. But I was so upset, and I had just had to kill Zevran too, and it was terrible, terrible.
So that was my
That's
first
amazing.
playthrough.
Yeah, I have always managed to bring Zevran around, which is fortunate. I think I would be upset if I had to kill Zevran.
Yeah, he's one of my faves.
As I say, I did leave him a warden one time so that I would have to make the Alistair Hawk choice. But then
I'm
I just
working
played
on that.
But then I just played through as a trash hawk. It's the only time I've ever picked up books.
Yeah. So, yeah, I've done all. Well, thank God for the keep. Because I've taken every warden into the Fade just to hear like I
What
find
they
it
say.
Yeah, and I find it fascinating what the fear demon says to them. But yeah, so I've done that. But what I was gonna say is kind of like we've talked a lot about the characters. Do you have like a canon romance for each of your protagonists?
I guess Alistair for sure for my warden. In Dragon Age 2, I don't think I do. The only character I have left for romance is Sebastian, and I'm like, I'm gonna do it, even though it's terrible. He's the worst. He's terrible. And then I guess in Inquisition, I also don't really have a canon one. In all of my playthroughs, so the first playthrough I married Sera, and then the second playthrough I romanced the Iron Bull, and the third playthrough I romanced Blackwall till he dumped me, and then I romanced Cullen so that I could like kill two birds with one stone. Like, it was very strategic. But then I married Cullen. But in every single ending, my Inquisitor always ends up being a Jenny. So I guess that's like the canon. My canon relationship with my Inquisitor is like the road, the road and the mischief. Either way.
So our next question is obviously you write for Star Wars and other books and things. So what from Dragon Age, from a narrative perspective, what do you think is the most compelling?
I think for me, what's the most compelling is the unreliability of the historical narrative. So when you go back, for example, and you listen to Morrigan tell the story of her mother, tell the story of Flemeth, you're like, oh my God, every single part of this is true. It just took place over a much longer time period than we were aware of, because when you get the rest of it from Solus later on, it's like this huge difference. And even though it's also kind of the same, and like her relationship with the elves and how she became a Ball in the first place, and like all that kind of stuff. And I love the like complete unreliability of literally everything. And I also think so that just makes sort of like an interesting place to tell stories, an interesting world to tell stories. But I think the thing that makes for fascinating individual and personal stories is that pretty much every single system they've ever implemented in Thedas was a good idea at the time, but it has become really bad. So like right from like the Veil right on down to like the Templars, like everything that they've ever tried to do worked, and then it just got like it had too many secrets, or it got like too involved in itself or whatever, and it just got slowly perverted over time. So you still have people like Colin and Cassandra who are like, or even Liliana, who are like committed to this ideal, but the actual thing doesn't exist anymore. And I think that makes, because you get personally invested in the characters and their development. And I hope that we get something similar with the Qun. I don't know if we will, but I think it would be interesting to get something similar with the Qun, because it's really the only system that hasn't started to like self-question yet. There's obviously a lot of questioning going on from the outside and a couple exalted marches, but within the actual context of the Qun itself, the people who are in it don't have questions ever.
That's a really good point. And I think the whole unreliability of the narrative and the historical information, like, it really leads to some fascinating character development. Like, and I always think primarily of Cassandra because she's my favorite, but also because like we just see her wrestle with her faith so much in Inquisition, and that makes a character so much more real than like anything else you could do.
One thing that I'm looking forward to on this playthrough of Inquisition, so don't tell me, I'm playing through as a Dalish elf, and I picked Mythal on purpose And I was like, while I'm here, I might as well do the Solus romance, even though. So I am gonna do it, and I know there's that scene coming with the Vasaline. But I don't know any of the details. So I'm super excited to kind of get there and figure out what, because I'd be like, I'm not even gonna say like what my character's reaction is, it's definitely gonna be like what my reaction is gonna be. And just to see something that like, because I love the idea that it was something that was cruel, and then the Dalish elves made it part of their identity, not realizing what the origin was. And so I think there's an argument to be had that like for like reclaiming something, right? Like, oh, we're taking this back for ourselves. And I think it's really interesting that the Dalish have it. And so I'm really interested to see how I feel when I get to that part of the story.
Yeah, and I'm making my way through a Solus romance for the first time right now too. So I haven't done that part either, and I kind of think right now it's that whole aspect of the Dalish taking that practice is kind of an interesting reversal of like all of these systems that were good and now are bad. It's like kind of a reversal of that. So
I think I really liked about the unreliable historical narrative, and we talk all the time about like how Solus is not a reliable narrator, and that he might not outright lie, but he's not telling the truth.
No.
And that just kind of like, I really like that device that BioWare does a lot in its gameplay of a lot of the information and historical information you're given is from an in-game perspective. There isn't kind of that like third point of view narrator.
I like to imagine that he's telling the truth on two fronts. One, he was really pissed off when Mythal died. And two, he did actually create the veil. I love the idea of I'm a synthesis player for Mass Effect, which I think puts me in a distinct minority. But I definitely think of the synthesis ending and like what people are going to say about Shepard in 2,000 years, based on what happened with the synthesis ending. And I think about that in context with Solus a lot, except Shepard doesn't have to stay around to watch. Right. Whereas Solus literally watches the whole world change, and then he views it as lesser, even though everybody else is fine. And he just has this like overwhelming drive to put it back, even though it's not fixing anything.
That's an awesome point.
Both have heavy green overtones.
Yeah.
Yes. So true. So true. Interesting. Yes. I wonder if there's a connection.
So if magically somehow the execs at BioWare and in their storytelling group said, Kate, will you write us a Dragon Age novel? What would you want to write about?
Well, first of all, there wouldn't be any magic involved. My agent is actively pursuing them.
Yes.
So I do have an idea that I'm not going to tell you about, but the lore is so deep in Dragon Age that I think it is a prime target for YA. Which is what I choose to write. Like, I would write an adult novel maybe someday, but my primary choice is always to write young adult novels. And coming off of Queen's Hope, and the Padme trilogy, I really feel like my name has some recognition in the writing fantasy girl politics circle. And there's a poem attached to a bed in Val Royale called The Three Little Empresses, and I want it.
Awesome. Well, that's amazing. I crossing my fingers that
all
that happens. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
You have at least two people who would buy it.
That's true.
So BioWare is not unfamiliar to Star Wars, as they did the first Knights of the Old Republic game and the Old Republic MMO, which
they still do that, right? Do they still add more to that?
Yeah, they're still doing stuff for that. I don't think it's anything. They're not officially licensed, I guess, by Disney, or I don't know how that works or whatever. But so Dragon Age contains a little bit of Star Wars Easter eggs in there.
They always make me laugh.
Yes. I think of one that I like to think that the fact that their god is called the Maker is a nod to Star Wars, just so they could say thank the Maker.
Yeah.
So apparently, when you unlock the door to rescue Honora, she says, "Aren't you a little short for a guard?"
Yeah.
Which is what Leia says to Luke.
Yeah.
There's an armor in Origins that's called, the pieces of it is called Shadow of the Empire, which is an offshoot kind of like parallel video game back from the 90s that follows the time between Empire and Jedi. So there's a book too. Aveline calls, when you're walking around at night, she calls a hive of scum and villainy.
Yeah.
Every city needs an outlet when you're in the Hangman. Meryl and Hawk share the iconic "I love you, I know." Ryan.
I love that.
Yes. This one I think is really interesting, which is this. Now we're in Dragon Age Inquisition. Cole has a dialogue that says, "He was their enemy the whole time, but she made him forget so he could change." You could argue that this is about BioWare's Star Wars games, Knights of the Old Republic, in Revan and what happens with Bastila and all of that. Could also be referencing Solus, if it's in whether that's Solus and Mythal, or that's Solus and a Elf Inquisitor.
Yeah. It's there's definitely I love that stuff about like geek stuff in general. The overlaps, because everybody's a fan of everything else.
Yeah.
So we all love a good Easter egg. So I can't think off the top of my head if I like deliberately put a Dragon Age thing into any of the Padme books, but there's probably something unintentional. Like someone will be like, "Oh, is this from Dragon Age?" I'll be like, "Yeah, I definitely did that one on purpose."
Well, looks like I'm rereading.
Etherbound, actually, my most recent sci-fi, is my most Dragon Age-ish book. Which is to say, not at all, but in my head, like that's what I was thinking about when I was writing it. I'm always terrible at giving comps for stuff like that, because I'm like, oh yeah, this is super my Dragon Age book, and it just means that I was like playing Dragon Age while I wrote it, not that I like filled it with references or character archetypes.
That one is on my list for reading this year, but I haven't gotten to it yet. So,
and the last one is Cole will also say in his dialogue. Cole has the best line sometimes.
He does.
He
says he didn't kill his father, he was his father, which spoilers, Darth Vader is Luke's father.
Yeah, that's fantastic.
Those are all really good, and I think there are a few more. I didn't put them all in there, but these are the most obvious ones. But I have never heard Aveline say that going into the Hanged Man or at the Hanged Man or whatever. So now I'm like, I just want to replay DA2 so
you can hear that.
All right. Well, we're going to take a quick break and do our little mid-break, and then we'll come back and get into our character deep dive on Sera.
So, I'm still trying to wrap my mind around this.
I'm listening.
Ah, you've returned. A letter arrived for you.
Hello, welcome to the middle of the show where we tell you all about what's happening in the show. We want to obviously point out our Patreon where you can come and support us and be with us. And if you like what we do, support us at various tiers. You can go, the link is in the description. If you want to hang out with us, talk with us, chat with us about anything Dragon Age, you can join our Discord server. Also, the link found in the description. There you can also show us your heroes, hawks, and heralds, which we will read aloud in the show. If you can't support us financially, we totally get that. We understand that. But you can also just leave us a review on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. If you leave a 5-star review and leave us some kind words, we'll read them out on a future episode of the show. Shelby, do we have anything to share today?
I don't have a review today, but I will read out the names of all of our patrons.
Oh, yeah.
Which you forgot, but that's okay. So our patrons are Lisa M, Genesis, Derek B, Fletcher M, and Zuba. Thank you all so much for being our patrons. We're so thankful for you, and y'all really make us able to continue doing this show. So we're super thankful for y'all.
Yeah, thank you so much. So let's get back into it.
Let's do it.
All right.
My friend.
You fear barbarians will swoop down upon you.
Yes, swooping is bad.
Yeah, this is gonna be fun.
So Shelby, I've been talking a lot this episode. It's your turn.
Okay. Okay.
Well, I always begin the lore part with some fun facts about whatever we're talking about, just because I think it's fun, and you can find a lot of Dragon Age trivia online if you're looking. So, there are a lot of fun facts about Sera, which I think is fitting because I think you can argue she's the most fun character in Dragon Age. So, Sera is 100% completely self-taught with her bow. And she has exceptional skill for being just self-taught. She was also in Denerim during the 5th Blight. So I have a headcanon. This is my personal headcanon. This is not canon, but I'm going to share it because I fully believe that it happened. I think that Sera, because she was an orphan, I think she lived in the Denerim orphanage that you can go to in the alienage that's haunted. And the reason why I think that is because she talks about spending time, I think in some offhanded comment, spending time in an orphanage, and she has this deep, deep aversion to magic. So what better place for her to learn an aversion to magic in a place that's haunted? So that's my personal headcanon about Sera. So when you first meet Sera, she's super open that she doesn't like anything elven. She's not elfy, that's her words. And she doesn't even really consider herself to be elven, which we'll get into why a little bit later. She also hates Solus from the get-go. I also was the same on that. And if you are an elven inquisitor, you really have an uphill battle with her. And then Sera loves pranks. One of her personal quests is going around Skyhold pranking all of your advisors, which is hilarious. If you've never done it, I really recommend it. Mary Kirby, who is a writer at BioWare, describes her as tequila and Skittles, which makes no sense, but also at the same time, 100% completely makes sense to me.
Yep.
Tequila and Skittles.
It just fits. Those are the vibes she puts out, 100%. And then Sera cuts her own bangs with a knife, which is why they are uneven and messy. And then my last fun fact is that she is at least a head taller than every other elf in Dragon Age Inquisition, except for Solus. They are both very tall elves, which is interesting and reminds me of another headcanon that I've seen on Reddit, that Sera is the elven goddess Andriel reincarnated. I don't know if that's legit, but it's an interesting theory for sure.
I noticed that about the elves because when I played through in Origin as an elf, I was like, oh my God, I'm so short all the time. But I don't feel short as a Dalish Inquisitor.
No, you don't. You don't at all. Yeah, it's interesting. And I think when I'm around Meryl going into her house, I also feel like I am large in this space. But I don't feel that at all. My usual go-to party is Blackwall, a mage, and either Sera or Varric. And the only person I feel like who is short is Varric. So, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I feel the same way.
Well, let's get into the general biography of Sera a little bit. So Sera is one of the companions from Inquisition. She is one of 2 elves, and she's an archery rogue. She is romanceable by female inquisitors only. And as a young child, like I mentioned earlier, Sera was orphaned. She was also caught stealing as a young child, presumably after her parents died. And she doesn't really remember much of her childhood, but she does remember growing up around the alienage in Denerim, which you can experience in Origins. After her parents died, Lady Teraline Imald, a sick and barren human woman, took her in and became her patron and foster mother. Lady Imald died well before the Blight, and Sera inherited the estate, but she rejected it and the money, of course, that came with it. So Sera becomes part of the Red Jennies after Lady Imald dies, but before the start of Inquisition. We don't really know the exact timeline on that. But I want to talk about Lady Imald a bit because I really think that she influences so much of Sera's life. So she was kind of like her adopted mother, but she also did a lot of damage to Sera. And there's a moment between Sera and the Inquisitor, if your approval is high enough, where Sera will surprise you, the Inquisitor, with a picnic on the roof. It's super cute. During the picnic, Sera tells you a story about her childhood, and specifically about Lady Imald. Apparently, Lady Imald repeatedly lied to Sera throughout her childhood about being able to make cookies. Imald was not actually able to bake, and so she purchased cookies for Sera from a bakery nearby. But she lied to Sera about this and pretended that they were her own cookies. And to keep Sera away from the bakery, Imald told her that the baker hated all elves. Obviously, Sera's going to discover the truth because she's Sera, and she refused to eat cookies anymore after this, and now, in the present day, she refers to them as pride cookies because they remind her that Lady Imald's pride was so large that she lied and made Sera feel less than because of her race. I think this is a huge moment for Sera. It affects her views on elves. It affects her views on herself. It makes her realize a lot of Imald's microaggressions and even just like outright hostility. And it also makes her realize that Imald took Sera in order to make herself feel better, not because she cared for Sera and felt bad for her.
It has big, like, nice white lady adoption feels
Yes,
to it,
100%.
right? Like big, like, yeah.
Yeah, it reminds me of someone who goes on a mission trip to Africa and adopts a baby and comes home and is like, oh, look at my baby. It's just icky. It's just icky. And I think this really shapes her outlook on life and her views about how big people manipulate little people, thinking only of themselves and hurting anybody like that's in their path. And then I think that really does lead her into working with the Red Jennies. I think all these things are connected. And I think it's really tragic. And it feels like to me, Sera has never had someone until she joins the Inquisition who really loves her for her.
Yeah. And I think it's kind of nice that even if you don't romance her, she still gets, for whatever he's worth, Blackwall, who is someone that respects her a great deal, even though like he thinks she's insane, but because she is, but like their relationship is something that I find really interesting.
Yes, I love to take Blackwall, Sera, and Solus together. It's just hilarious. It's
just bullying.
Yeah, Solus, that is.
Yeah, bullying Solus. I think about like Sera and Blackwall. I think one of the reasons that they mesh well together is that they both very much have this like motivation for helping the everyday people of Thedas. And it's not that like Cassandra Cullen and all these Liliana like don't have that motivation, but they're involved in this big political scheme and in this huge institution, whereas Sera and Blackwall are just there. And I think that they add a much needed perspective like the Iron Bull will do for you, where he takes you to meet the people of the Inquisition. They're constantly saying like, oh, there's all this, there's these everyday people, there's people attached to these big causes that you're doing. And Sera very much for me reminds you of like, you could very easily as an Inquisitor get sucked into the nobility because you have to kiss their ass basically to get things done. And Sera constantly reminds you of, no, they're not the good guys here. And that's another thing about Sera. I feel
we're trying to make some changes.
Sera for me, is one of the few characters who actually realizes what's wrong with Thedas.
Yeah. She has a lot of really interesting dialogue at the beginning about like the servants and stuff like that. And so I like to imagine that post Trespasser, she is furious for two reasons. One, because Solus got one up on her, just generally, but two, the manner in which he did it, because he did it through the servants. And for me, I like to imagine that she just has like the biggest, because we know she holds grudges, right? So she just has this, like, not necessarily guilt, because I don't think Sera feels guilty about things the way that other people do, but she just has this like incredible burning resentment that not only did it happen, but it happened in that way, and it was soulless. Like, of everything that could have gone wrong, it really kind of set up against her. So I like imagining Sera after the Inquisition as being just like hell for leather all the time, because she didn't like him beforehand, but now she's like, not on my watch.
That's now canon for me.
Almost like burn the world down in the opposite direction, right? Like, if Solus has burned the world down in one direction, she's like burn the world down in the other direction, because like she is pissed.
I like to imagine she has an arrow with Solus's name carved in it, and she just carries it around like Jack Sparrow did with his one shot.
Totally.
For one. And bees. Many bees.
Oh yes, of course.
Well, my last little fact about her in the biography section is what we're just talking about. She has a distinct hatred of nobles and pretty much all wealthy people, which you will know if you do one of her personal quests, where you basically have to kill the noble if you want her to be happy, or she does it for you, I think. And I think it stems a lot from her childhood, but really just all of her experiences throughout life. There's a lot of times in the game where she makes comments about little people, and that means regular everyday people, the everyday person of Thedas, like the person who works in the Hanged Man, or the person who, you know, sweeps the streets of Kirkwall, if that even exists. Like, not the Viscount, not the Divine, not these important people. And I think these are the people that she really tries to help in her work with the Red Jennies.
Yeah. I think the other person she hates probably almost as much as Solus is Vivian. If you take them out together, eventually Vivian will say something like, "Oh, you dealt with this really well." And Sera will realize that Vivian set it up, so Vivian basically maneuvered the nobles into a Red Jenny situation, and then the Red Jennies did exactly what Vivian wanted them to, and Sera's furious about it.
That's interesting. I've never heard that dialogue before.
The first time I heard it, I was like, "Oh my god!"
It's interesting.
I almost never take Vivian anywhere, so every time I play through the game, I'm like, I have to take Vivian somewhere, and I've learned something fascinating about her. I'm like, you're a terrible person. I love you.
Which is so funny because she doesn't hate Josephine.
Nope, she loves Josie.
Nope.
Even if you are a human Inquisitor, a Trevelyan, she doesn't hate you.
Yeah. No, she likes you, but I just don't like her.
Yeah.
Every game I go in and I'm like, I'm gonna be nicer to Vivian this time. And then she says something and I'm like, you're the worst.
Right.
They're all the worst though. That's the best part. They're all the worst.
Yeah, that's true. Everyone has major character flaws, which I appreciate. I appreciate that.
Interesting for me is that Dorian is the only one that Sera likes who she can end up not hating, or who she doesn't like, where they kind of like have a like understanding middle relationship.
Oh yeah.
And I think that's just comes from Dorian's own perspective, in that he's really there to like learn and experience the world. So Dorian starts in a place where he's open to different ideas and different changes.
I think,
and Vivian is not that.
Yeah, Vivian's not, for sure. I think the Iron Bull is interesting too, because he and Sera just don't talk about it ever. They just they only ever talk about work. And if you talk to Iron Bull about it, he says that, like, you know, Colin and Cassandra would probably be fine under the Qun because they like having assignments, but Sera would probably die.
Yeah.
And like it's not even like he doesn't hesitate. And I'm like, what do you guys talk
Damn.
about when we're not out in the field? Because like you can't talk about anything. She's super Andrastian and crazy.
Mhm.
And at that point in the game, he's still Ben Hasrath. So
Mhm.
it was really fascinating for me for their relationship because the things that they must not talk about, like consciously never engage about, because she is just, they're both immovable objects on that score, but somehow they become friends. Anyway.
I think that's probably easier for Iron Bull because he's probably used to that since, you know, he worked as a spy and all of that. He's probably used to like at least pretending like he doesn't believe in the Qun, at least at some level. So I guess I could understand it that way. So let's move on a little bit to quotes and contributions. I brought 2 quotes from Sera, so I'll just read them out. The first one is this. She says, "Someone little always hates someone big. And unless you don't eat, sleep, or piss, you're never far away from someone little." And I think that is so true and so profound for our world, not just Thedas. And then the second quote is this. "Bad things happen to bad people. If we find someone not so bad, maybe he'll end up not so dead." And I just think that perfectly describes Sera's motivation.
Yeah.
And then my 2 contributions of Sera's are, she is the first female companion who is an exclusive romance option for female protagonists only. And if you don't romance her, she starts a romantic relationship with Dagna, who she will affectionately nickname Whittle, which I think is so cute.
My I romanced her the first time, so I didn't find that out until my second playthrough. And then I was like, oh, poor Lace Harding. She's always alone.
Oh
Yeah.
I
love her so much.
I love Harding, and I was so sad that she's not fully romanceable. And like,
No, she's
this
not even
is like
romanceable if you're a dwarf. It's so unfair.
No.
It's so unfair.
I so badly want there to be a dwarven full romance in DA4. Like, we need it. We need it. We haven't had one yet, and I need that. I think I say that every episode. Like, we need more dwarf content, please.
Yeah.
Okay, so my last little section before we talk about our opinions is, where is Sera now? So after Corypheus's defeat, the Inquisitor can meet Sera before the Exalted Council. Sera invites the Inquisitor to play pranks on people, of course, as she is wont to do. And they basically throw pies at random people's faces. And afterwards, they discuss any possible changes to the Inquisition once the council's over. And she invites the Inquisitor to be a Red Jenny, which I just think is so sweet. And I do it every time, too. I've never turned her down.
Even when I was married to Cullen, I was like, I just got married,
Yeah.
but sure.
Yeah, absolutely. We could do this together, Colin. Let's go.
Yeah.
Colin would be
then-
down.
Colin's totally down for it.
He would.
He just stays at his little hospital.
Mm-hmm.
And every once in a while, Sera mails him something dangerous.
Yep, exactly.
And then Meriden, the bard, starts singing Sera Was Never in Trespasser, and Sera literally destroys her instrument and calls the song creepy. Which is just so funny to me. Like, that's the perfect reaction Sera would have.
No, it's my favorite song in Dragon Age that you hear. My favorite song that you don't hear is Andraste's Mabari, which I like to imagine when you romance Cullen, there is, in post game, if you romance Cullen, there is a super innuendo packed verse added to Andraste's Mabari that becomes very popular in Ferelden taverns. And Cullen hasn't been able to go to a pub since. He can only
That's
drink
hilarious.
at home.
Oh, that's hilarious.
Yeah, I love Sera Was Never. I just got it finally, because it unlocks automatically when you get her. If you recruit her, the song unlocks automatically, so you have to keep going back into the bar until Mary plays it. And every time she starts it, I'm like, well, I'm here for the next 3 minutes.
Yeah, it's such a good one too. I listened to that on Spotify the other day.
Oh, so if you romance Sera, you get to get married in Trespasser. Cullen Mancers and Sera Mancers. I'm sorry, but we're superior, clearly.
I was like, I
We
can't
get the
believe you don't get to
marriages.
marry Cassandra, even if she's not
I
the divine.
know.
That's unfair.
It's so
Why would you even
sad.
play this game as a dude?
Well, in my playthrough, I tried so hard to make Vivian the divine in that playthrough when I romanced Cassandra, just because I wanted to see like what happened, what she would do. And I was unsuccessful, and it kind of defaulted to Cassandra, and I was heartbroken because she basically dumps you. Spoiler alert. And it's just so sad. I was like, this is not
What I wanted at all.
I get, in my head canon, the Inquisitor and Cassandra do get married, but it's a fact that Cassandra is such a sap for romance. She's not going to let her wedding be overshadowed by some political crap.
Yeah.
That's fair. But still, I would still.
Okay, so my last little where are they now piece about Sera is, in the end, she did go back to her life as a Red Jenny, and if Cassandra or Liliana is divine, Sera offers the services of the Friends of Red Jenny to the divine should the nobles get out of line, which I just love that.
The idea of Liliana with the Friends of Red Jenny, in addition to all the other stuff that she has, is honestly terrifying.
Terrifying. That's
Wonderful.
so true.
So we always end our character deep dives with just talking about what we love about this character, what we don't love about this character, and just generally our opinions. So
the first time I played Inquisition, I was like, oh, I'm probably gonna romance the Iron Bull, because you can't romance James Vega in ME3, so picked the next Freddie Prinze Jr. character. So I was like, I was gonna romance the Iron Bull, and then like literally she walked into the courtyard, and I was like, heart eyes, like the whole thing, and I was like, oh my god, I hope she's romanceable, and then she was. And so like I had no idea what any of the characters were or anything like that. So I didn't even know she was going to be romanceable when I met her. And when I finally because I always take everyone's heart options every time, just in case. Also because I like being nice to people, except Dorian, because if you take his heart options, you get disapproval points. So
I didn't know that.
Yeah, if you're a girl, you get like disapproval points.
Well, that makes sense.
Because it's very blatantly hitting on him. Like his are not subtle. So other people's are subtle. Anyway, so except Blackwall, because you can soft block him into a romance as well. Anyway, so I took everybody's hard options, which meant I got like everybody's shovel talk, which was hilarious. But then I was like, I was gonna romance Sera, and it was just so much fun. Like, she's just so random, and like everybody else has these like, except for Cassandra, has these like really serious, like, if you're gonna like seal the romance with this person, you have to like fight a duel or like kill a dragon or blah 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 whatever, but like all you have to do to romance Sera is talk to all your friends. And then she's like, you told everyone we're dating? That's awesome. I'm like, oh my god, your standards are so low. Though Vivian is correct about what would finally get her to laugh, which I always thought was funny.
Yeah. Cullen, you just have to deal with the trauma and thing of addiction.
Cullen, you just keep going back. You just keep talking to him, and then you're like, oh wait, are we married? That was sudden. But no, I love Sera's romance, and I love the kind of like when you're out in the field afterwards and people start hassling you about it. It's very funny.
Yes.
But I just find her so fun. I think there's not a lot. Like, I think they tried to make Isabella fun, but Dragon Age 2 is so depressing that it doesn't really work. And I think she's really, like, as we were saying earlier, she's really like the only fun character in the whole franchise. And I love that about her, romancing or not. She's fun to hang around. Also, she brings the bees, and I love the bees.
Yeah. when I first, oh, go ahead, Austin.
I was just gonna say, I think that with Sera being fun, but like with Isabella is so outshined by Varric, and like that's the first time we see Varric that it's hard to like, okay, yeah, Isabella, whatever. Ooh, hilarious dwarf.
Yeah.
But then like with Sera as well, like it's just really funny and like so lighthearted, which with such a serious game with like big consequences, it's a breath of fresh air, honestly.
Yeah. I was finally paying attention, or had the right combination of people, that I got the full, because you have to have Sera, the Iron Bull, and Solus pretty early in the game. And the Iron Bull will ask how Sera managed to get a whole hive of bees into Colin's practice dummy. And she's like, I don't remember, I just did it. And they were like, and both Solus and Iron Bull are like, what are you talking about? Like, that doesn't make any sense. And she's like, well, yeah, if you think about it, you get stung. And Solus is like, that almost makes sense. I'm like, that's Sera's whole approach to life. If you think about it, you get stung. So she just doesn't think about it. It's like that does almost make sense. Solus, that's the one thing you're correct about this game. Like, I just love her.
That's hilarious.
So I was just gonna say that Sera's the only one that Solus will joke with. And there is a conversation that happens where Sera's like talking about the Fade, and Solus is basically like, you could have been to the Fade and you'd never known it. And Sera's like, are you serious? Like, obviously terrified. And Solus is like, he like smirks and says like, maybe you'll think twice before putting snakes in my sleeping whatever.
That's hilarious. I've never heard that one either.
Yeah.
It's because you don't take Solus after you get out of the hinterlands.
Yeah.
That is true.
Well, I know there are a lot of people who don't like Sera out there. And I didn't love Sera the first time I ever played through, just because I was an elf and she constantly picked fights with me. And which, you know what, I get it. But the way I like to think about it, and I gained a much deeper understanding of Sera after doing the research, but I definitely look at her now as like through a trauma-centered lens. Like, she has been through so much stuff, and I think she is the youngest companion. So she's very young. She's like 19, 20, 21 in Inquisition. And so of course she's immature. Like, every 19-year-old I've ever met was immature, you know? So I guess I just am looking at her with a little bit more grace than I used to, or at least in my first couple playthroughs. I think looking at her through the lens of trauma and everything that she's experienced helps me have more empathy for her as a character. I don't know if y'all have any thoughts about why people dislike Sera.
I know I did read somewhere at some point that like people were upset that the first like canonical lesbian in Dragon Age was so bigoted. And I was like, the first canonical, literally everything in Dragon Age is super bigoted. Like, literally all of them. And I think it's one of the things that I love about Dragon Age Inquisition is that it's this like rolling model of acceptable bigotry, like things that we'll accept. And so some people will accept Sera hating elves, but they won't accept Vivian hating mages. And, you know, Solus being Solus and Cullen being, he goes on a journey, but like originally Cullen being Cullen. And so I think a lot of the time when people are like, oh, I don't like this character because of their character flaw, which is the reason you're not supposed to like them. I always think that's just as interesting, because with the possible exception of like Cole, everybody in Dragon Age Inquisition is super prejudiced against somebody. And it just manifests in all these different ways. And I think some people understandably have more trouble dealing with self-loathing, like you see in Vivian and like you see in Sera, and even to a degree in Solus, because he really hates the Dalish. But just the kind of idea of the sort of evolution of what made this character this way, that every character in Dragon Age has. And I think not liking them because of the flaw they have is reasonable. Like if you didn't like her because you couldn't romance her, like, sorry, that doesn't count.
Right. Right. Yeah, that's a good point. Austin, what do you think about Sera?
I mean, I liked Sera. Sera's one of the few characters that normally I categorize DA comparators like, okay, they're better as a romance, they're better as a friend. Sera's one of the few that I think you get benefits and there's good storytelling either way.
Yeah.
One of my things that frustrates me about BioWare is that they lock so much like personal development behind a romance. Like the biggest example is Ashley Williams in Mass Effect. Her moving forward, you don't get that unless you romance her. She doesn't get over her prejudice unless you're in that romance.
She does, because I played as a girl.
Oh.
But I also didn't romance Caden. I didn't romance anybody because I knew I was going to romance Garrus in game 2. So I think I think most people romance Caden and she dies, right? Like most women romance Caden and she dies. Whereas I was playing and I had like a whole crisis of faith and I picked Ashley because I legitimately liked her more. And because Caden was creepy.
Yes.
And then over the course of the next 2 games, Ashley does get that sort of personal growth. So you don't have to romance her, but you have to keep her alive, which in Mass Effect is kind of the same thing sometimes.
Yeah, that's true.
And so there's just that. And then like a lot of Fenris is another example. Like you don't really get his whole he doesn't learn to be okay with mages as okay as Fenris can be with mages, unless he's romancing Hawk and via Bethany or via a mage Hawk. And so, but Sera, you can do most everything without having to romance her. And like, you can be her friend as a woman and not romance her. You can be her friend as a man and have that platonic relationship. And that's one of the things I appreciate about Sera.
Yeah, that's a good point. Sometimes when I'm playing through, I will admit, I'm like, what do dudes get out of this emotionally? Like, do they just really like hitting people? Because like I do try to be friends with everybody for as long as possible. Even when I know
and sometimes that's hard.
Yeah.
I do think that is one of the reasons that Dragon Age Inquisition isn't as liked by the like bro gamer category, because it's really hard to power game in and I'm doing that because I'm playing Elden Ring right now, which is like you just power game. That's how you play that game. And so I can see that like it's really hard to like, because you don't get to boost your stats when you level up.
Yeah.
Like in the other games you did, but you don't in Inquisition. And it's really hard to find like really foolproof like power gaming strategies that make you feel destructive, I guess.
I think I can only think of one, and it's with the Knight Enchanter specialization.
Yeah.
But they kind of patched that anyway, so
yes,
it no longer exists.
So I see that, but like my favorite game is Dragon Age 2, but Inquisition is the one that I keep coming back to.
Right.
Just because I feel like there's more to do, and I feel like there's still stuff I haven't found and learned in that game.
I mean, the last time I played, the third playthrough, I found the dungeon for the first time. And I was like, I did wonder where we were keeping all these people.
Oh, in Skyhold?
Yeah.
Have you found the flower crown?
No. In Inquisition?
Yeah.
Yep. Okay, so it's really complicated, and I'll send you like a link to a walkthrough. But basically, you have to jump on this rock in the Emerald Graves like 18 bajillion times until this voice says something else that's crazy, and you're like, what the heck? And then it opens up a quest, and you basically have to go this super back way underneath the fortress in the Emprise, and do a bunch of other stuff, and then you get a flower crown as a reward.
Here, I'm gonna show you the picture.
No, don't show me the picture. I want to find it.
Oh, never mind then. I won't do that.
Thank you. Do tell me how to do it, but don't show me what it is.
Yeah, I'll send you the link. It takes forever, but it's
that's okay.
So cute.
That's
it's
okay.
So cute.
What I will do is that'll be one of the quests that I bring Dorian and Bull on, because that just will get them closer to hooking up, because that takes forever. And we usually end up parking them on the Hissing Waste somewhere while I'm like doing something else entirely.
Yep. I've done that exact thing.
And it's always the Hissing Waste. I don't know why it's always
is. It's because it takes forever. Yeah, forever to walk in that area. I don't know why it's so big.
And no one uses horses.
No, because they don't.
No, because they suck.
Horses.
Yeah.
I bought, because I bought it second hand. I didn't realize, but I bought like the ultra mega everything included blah 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 whatever version. So like it comes with Trespasser, it comes with the other 2 DLCs, like all that kind of stuff, and it comes with all these like extra horses.
Ooh,
so nice. If I have to use a horse, I take the Fell Beast, which is my favorite. So every playthrough, as soon as I get the horses, I change the Forder out for the for the undead unicorn, and I always post a picture of it with like, I got my pony or something like that. And then someone always comments like, what eldritch horror is that? And I was like, how dare you say that about my pony?
Have you ever seen the Nug pony?
Yes. It's terrifying.
That one's my fave.
It's
so creepy.
Sometimes I use the horse in the Fallowmire, because I hate the Fallowmire.
Yeah, it's not my fave.
But usually wait and do the Fallowmire when I'm like level 18. Just like steamroll through it.
Yep.
I do think that's a Star Wars thing, where we look at things that are supposed to be monsters and we treat them like babies.
Yeah. It's so cute. I want one.
The Rancor is one that comes to mind.
Yep. 100%.
Yeah. Oh yeah. The baby Rancor. Well, do we have anything else to add about Sera?
Not really.
I don't think so.
Not really. Well, thank you so much for joining us. This has been awesome.
This was fun.
Anyway, we normally let all of our guests promo like where our listeners can find you, what stuff you've got upcoming, all that kind of stuff. So
okay. So I am at EK_Johnston on Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok. I'm very bad at TikTok. And then I am EK Johnston without underscores, because you can't have underscores on Tumblr. ekjohnston.ca is my website. Queen's Hope, the third book in the Padme trilogy, I guess. I think we're calling it officially. I don't know. Comes out on April 5th, which is 5 sleeps from now. 6 sleeps. It's very close. And I am very, very frenetic about that right now. But it was really lovely to come and talk to you guys. I love Dragon Age so much.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for being on the show.
No problem.
Thanks for listening to the Dragon Age Lorecast. As always, you can find us on Twitter at DA Lorecast. If you have any lore questions, topics to unpack, or side character suggestions, email them to us at dalorecast@gmail.com. The Dragon Age Lorecast is a part of the Robots Radio Rocket Club. You can join the Robots Radio Network Discord by clicking the link in our episode description. If you enjoyed our show, we'd love it if you'd subscribe and give us a review. See you next time.
Do you love Dragon Age? Have you always wanted to learn more about its vast world and detailed lore? Are you still attached to your hero of Ferelden, even a decade after Dragon Age Origins came out? Or maybe you're a newer fan, still discovering a new tidbit or quest every day.
Well, either way, the Dragon Age Lorecast is the podcast for you. I'm Austin, also known as Teacup.
And I'm Shelby, also known as Shecup.
And come and join us as we embark on a journey to explore and discover all things Dragon Age.
We'll discuss all kinds of topics, from Lyrium to the Chantry and the great mysteries of the old gods, and even more that even you BioWare superfans might not know about.
So come and listen on Spotify, Apple, Stitcher, or wherever you get your podcast. And always remember,
Swooking